We've got a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Max here. Max, you're behind a company that has really changed the way that the nicotine pouch works. It's innovative, it's culturally relevant. You've got some amazing backers behind you, and you've made this space something that is, I think, more accepted and more accessible in general. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So Max, how did you get interested in this category? What led to you to want to pursue your passion in this avenue?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, necessarily my passion or something I had envisioned. It was more of a personal journey for me and a problem I was trying to solve. I kind of fell into it. And, a bit of background, I was in hospitality for 10, 15 years, part owned a couple of bars, worked my way up from busboy to bar owner, and really thought that that was my path. And by the time I was 30, I was pretty sick of the bar business, and it was a very difficult business to scale, and included lots of late nights, and just didn't think that it was sustainable. And so I was really looking for a new path. And a friend of mine owned a marketing agency, and so I went to work for him for a little bit just to switch it up. And it just so happened that his main client was British American Tobacco, and they were launching what they were calling their next generation products. So at first I was very hesitant. I was never a cigarette smoker growing up. I used chewing tobacco and snus playing hockey. I grew up in Canada and was part of the locker room culture, but just hated cigarettes and the way they smelled, but was a tobacco user. And at the time, they were launching next generation products. So this was, a vape device, which was the competitor to Juul at the time, and a heat not burn device, which is basically where you heat up tobacco instead of actually smoking it. And did that, and throughout that journey, kind of learned the ropes of, okay, what works, what doesn't, what can you do, what can't you do, and in that process, I switched from chewing tobacco to vaping and couldn't quit vaping. And I tried everything. I went to the pharmacy. I was super embarrassed about it at the time. I was, 30, and I couldn't quit this thing. Tried Nicorette, didn't work. Tried the patch, tried the lozenge. It was awful. It tasted super chalky. There had been no innovation in the category in decades. And a friend of mine introduced me to a white pouch product out of Sweden. At the time, it wasn't available. This was fully black market in Canada. And I tried it and instantly stopped vaping that same day. And it just had a dramatic positive impact on my life that I was like, oh man, this is like the future of the category. And how do I point myself in this direction?
So what do you think it was about it specifically that got you so hooked? Was it the way it was designed, the pouch? Was it like what made it so so interesting?
Yeah. So what made it so interesting is if you've used snus, which is tobacco in a pouch, traditional snus.
Yeah.
There's a few real negatives about it. So it kind of stains your teeth. It's got this like metal taste to it. You have to spit. So it really is pretty gross. Like if you've seen some of the guys that have what's called a spitter, and it's just very gross thing to use. But the bonus is it's very discreet. If you're vaping or if you're smoking, everybody around you kind of knows it, and that can be challenging if your partner hates it, or if you have kids and you don't want them seeing you do it. And so there's this real stigma and kind of shame around it. And the thing that really intrigued me about the pouch was it's very biosimilar to a nicotine chewing gum, which we've been using for decades. So it's essentially lots of the same ingredients. And the way the nicotine is absorbed is through the oral mucosa, through the gum lining, which is the same as snus, same as nicotine chewing gum, but it doesn't give you those negative things that we had with tobacco pouches. So you're not spitting, it doesn't stain your teeth. There's no known cancer causing properties. So we've extracted the nicotine from the tobacco plants. It's synthetically made. And so there's all these things that made it so much better. And when I first tried it, it was kind of one of those light bulb moments where I was like, okay, this is just a way better product than everything else that's out there that I've tried. And so how do I shift and go in this direction?
So once you had this experience, Max, Like when did it go from I like this to I need to build a business around this?
Yeah. Uh, you know what? I've been very entrepreneurial my whole life. So, I started an events company. It was kind of the classic. I was, even when I was a kid, I was, buying bulk candy and selling them for 5 cents a piece. So I've just always kind of had that mindset. My brother is a founder himself. He owns a very successful e-com company. It's just kind of part of how we think, I guess. And I saw this big gap in the market, and I just had such conviction because of how it impacted me that I was like, oh man, I can't imagine if I'm, graduating college, starting a family, and trying to quit vaping or cigarettes or snooze or whatever, and dealing with the same thing I did, where I literally went into the pharmacy with my hat down low, embarrassed to talk to the pharmacist, being like, how can you help? Like, is there anything here? So I think that's when I really saw the opportunity, and just with that mindset, and knowing from my previous experience of how big tobacco operated, I said, I think I can do this better. Like, I think there is a way that I can do this, even though I don't know anything. And, if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have started the company. So it's kind of a good thing to have that naivety going through it. But yeah, I just felt like I was the right person to do it.
How did you come up with the name and just like your branding? I think is really good branding. Like, how did you come up with the approach of how you're going to convey what this is and make it cool and relevant?
Yeah, well, I think so. I'll give you the background on the name. So part of my role was talking to smokers every day and just understanding the consumer. And so when I would talk to smokers, I would always ask them what they liked about smoking, because everybody always says, "Why do you smoke? It's terrible. You're going to die. It causes cancer, etc." Like those, everybody knows that. But the question I always asked was, what do you actually enjoy about it? Like, why are you doing this? Is there a reason? And most of the time, I would get a similar answer, which was, I like having that 5 minute break to myself where I don't have to think about anything. I'm taking that break. It's for me. And so I thought that was really interesting. And the idea was, how can we replicate that without actually having to go out and light up a cigarette? And so the idea was, instead of a break, can we go and have a session? And then, okay, can we go have a sesh? Can we turn that into something where people are going to have that break for themselves, but instead of lighting up, they're putting in a nicotine pouch, or chewing nicotine gum. We also sell a nicotine gum across Canada that's a cessation product for quitting smoking. So that was the idea behind the name.
Mhm. So, in terms of funding it, was this mostly bootstrap Max for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I had never raised money before, so I had no clue
Mhm.
what I was doing. Um, but I had a very strong conviction. I had, some track record of starting businesses before, so that gave me enough credibility to go and do a very small friends and family round. I think we raised 125,000. That was our very first round, from, five or six people, uh, friends and family. And that just gave me enough to go and get our first purchase order, just to prove that, hey, this, there is traction behind this idea. There are people that are willing to buy this, and start to set up some of the agreements we had with our initial Swedish suppliers.
But what did you do to get the product out there? Was it just like kind of a lot of seeding? I mean, it doesn't seem like it costs that much to make them. You could just seed out thousands of these. What were you
Yeah,
thinking?
yeah. I think like the initial thing was, I knew we needed a really good product. So I just knew that, like, it seems to a non-consumer that these are all the same. They're just kind of white pouches, and what's the
Yeah.
difference? But to a consumer, like, I was consuming these products every day. So for me, there's a huge difference between a good one and a bad one. Like, you can add moisture, you can make the flavors more subtle so they're not overpowering. The nicotine experience can be smoother and more balanced instead of hitting you all up front. There's all these things about the product that if you're a consumer, you recognize very quickly. So I knew that we needed a really good product, and Sweden is the birthplace of these products. So I knew I had to go there. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just started basically cold emailing manufacturers and saying, hey, I happen to be in Sweden in a week. Can I come visit you? And got, a couple meetings that way, and, some funny stories there. But that was how I initially did it. And then when we went to market, because the product was still so new, it was more of a gray area. And I basically just went door to door. So I just went to tobacco shops and just said, hey, would you be interested in carrying this product? And we launched in 3 stores in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from originally. And we sold out in all 3 stores. And one of the stores, we actually had a lineup of police officers, because one police officer told the rest of his squad that, this store had our product and they loved the product. And all of a sudden, every time we refilled them, they sold out right away. And that was really then what gave me the idea that these signals that, okay, this is something is here. I need to go deeper. And each time I got another signal that gave me the courage to keep going.
When did you realize you needed to raise more money?
I'm laughing because I'm like, there were many times where it was, we were flying very close to the sun.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I knew we needed to raise more money once we ran into our initial regulatory problems. We got a letter from Health Canada after we launched in those 3 stores saying, you guys can't sell these products in these stores. You need to go through
the
channel. And so basically that was a huge, blow, a huge gut punch. But we had enough. We had enough there that we knew, okay, this is something worth pursuing. And that gave us the ability to go and raise money and say, hey, we're going to go through the proper channel with Health Canada. We're going to submit our applications. We're going to do, what's required here. And so that kind of initial traction, initial sample gave us the ability to go and raise more money. And that money was going to fund some of the regulatory initiatives to actually make this product compliant.
I mean, you've got great backing. HBC is a partner of yours, but you've got some great personalities like Diplo. Has Diplo been helpful? Have some of these kind of more artist personalities helped you get the product out there? Like, there's great examples like Florida initially with Celsius and others. That really they had that kind of pull. What have you seen has been most effective in getting customers?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting with like these celebrity investors. I think with I've always had the approach where I've never actually had to go out and get anybody. Like I've never been like, we have to go and get Post Malone. That's never been the case. We've been pretty fortunate because of some of our investor network that we've been able to kind of get introduced. But every single one of the celebrities on our cap table uses our product and loves the product. And so Diplo, for example, approached us. We didn't even know that was an option. And he was using our product all the time. And he actually reached out to one of our investors that he knew and said, hey, how can I get involved with these guys? So that's been kind of my MO is always, I don't necessarily care if we have this, a cool celebrity on our cap table. What's more important to me is 1, that they have a history of nicotine or tobacco use, and 2, that they're using our product, right? And that they love our product, because the best way to engage with any of these celebrities is like, we don't have there's no obligation. It's just, hey, if you like our product and you're using it and you're out, then naturally, organically, they're going to start sharing it. And that's been the case with everything we've done with all of our celebrity investors. And it's more, top of funnel awareness than anything, and more contacts and credibility than necessarily like, hey, sharing a code, go and buy Sesh. I mean, I found that's not really effective. It's more this organic approach where you find people that really love your product. If they're a celebrity, great. That's only going to make it even better and amplify the message.
What have you found has been most effective in scaling retail channels? Like, what has enabled you to scale really well from those couple stores you mentioned to where you are today?
Yeah, so scaling retail, is really like dominoes. It's like, it's really hard to get the first one. And And if you get the first one, you have to make sure that it works, and it has to work really well, because that's your story going forward. And in the retail channel, there's early adopters, there's fast followers. So you have to go approach the early adopters, the people that are willing to take a risk on a new brand. You have to really sell them. And sometimes you're going to have to give them a better deal, and that's okay. But you have to make sure it works, because you're going to use that as your story going forward, as your playbook. And so that's what we did in Canada, how we scaled. We started in those tobacco shops, and then we got Shell, which is a major gas station chain in Canada, to take a chance on us. Then that led to a meeting with 7-Eleven, and then that led to a meeting with Circle K. And it was similar in the US. It was really hard to break in, super fragmented convenience retail channel. There's chains I never even heard of that are massive, like Buc-ee's in Texas. And that was our first chain. Like, that was the first domino. They've been incredible partners. And it was just serendipity. I happened to be in Austin, Texas, and the buyer reached out. And we had been reaching out to him nonstop, and he finally answered and said, "Hey, if you're in town and if you want to come by, I'll be willing to take a look at your product." And we did, and it worked. And we got in the store 3 months later. And then that led to our next round of financing. That led to getting more looks from retailers. And it's kind of this snowball or this domino that you have to keep that momentum going.
Yeah. You were just going at this buyer, and then eventually you got one opportunity, and then from there you had the case study, and the next.
We're going at every buyer. We were going at all of them.
Yeah.
And weren't really getting any bites. And it was like, oh man, this is really tough and surprising, because we have all this traction in another market. Why isn't it sticking here? And that's when I decided to move to Austin, because I was like, I bet if I was on the ground, what if I was there, I could make something happen. But it's kind of weird when you're in a different country, you're trying to do Zoom calls. Like, nothing beats being in person and sitting across from the buyer. And that's really what made the difference in that first one. And then once we got the first one, we did everything we could to make sure that it worked. So we over-invested. We made sure to support them every way we could. And then once that worked, then we could take that model, and then we had credibility to go to more retailers. And that's how we scaled it.
Has the online D2C business been just as important, more important? Like, where does it fall?
Yeah. So in our category, it's not as important than you might think. 90% of consumers in our category buy these products at convenience. So it's one of those things where, you go and purchase a can or two at a time, on your way home from work or on your way to work. That's generally how most of the consumers are purchasing these products. So I knew that although D2C is always, I think, important in the mix, unless we were at retail, we weren't going to win. We had to be a convenience, because that's where all the customers were. And so we knew that was incredibly important.
How did your strategy as a business evolve once you had significant scale with retail? I mean, what did the focus become? Was it brand awareness was the big focus at that point? I mean, you had the market penetration, you had the ability to get in front of customers. What became the focus?
Yeah, so it's one of those catch-22s where, in my mind, you don't want to invest in top of funnel brand awareness unless you have the distribution. Like, if we have this incredible marketing campaign with Diplo and Post Malone, and we spend a ton of money, but then you can't actually go and purchase the product anywhere, and there's too much friction for you to go online, wait a week, and get the order, then it's kind of a money fire. And so the strategy was always, let's invest in retail. Let's invest in our retail partners. So let's make sure that the shelf looks incredible. Let's make sure that we have support, people going into the stores, making sure that it's executed well, that it's merchandised properly, because that's where most people are going to discover the brand for the first time anyways. Mm-hmm. Like, it's pretty rare that somebody will see it and then it'll stick. It's usually like you're going into the store, you're buying something that you're pretty used to buying, and then something catches your attention, or the clerk is like, "Hey, have you tried this new product?" And all of a sudden you're like, "Okay, I'll give it a try." So in our category, it's quite unique, because that awareness to trial bucket is pretty compressed. Most people are discovering these products at their convenience store on the shelf.
When you think about like brand presentation, like what did you do to draw people in that weren't aware of your brand before? I mean, you could obviously say what it is. There's interest in the category in general, Max, but like, what did you do to present it the right way?
Yeah, well, I think my again, it kind of comes back to what I believe personally, which
Mm-hmm.
was when I was vaping or when I was using snus or even pouches, I always felt like um, it was hidden. You couldn't really find out what the ingredients were. Like I knew it was bad for me. I mean, there's 800 chemicals in vaping, but
Mm-hmm.
it was really hard to actually figure out like what is in this product and what are the risks. And I felt like as a brand, if we could say, "Hey, here's what's in our product. There's 10 ingredients in our product. Here's exactly what they are," and bring transparency into a category that historically had never had it, then that's something that would make us really different. And could we produce a really high quality premium product that was made in the USA that people are maybe going to pay an extra 50 cents or an extra buck for, but that's important to them, just like it was important to me. That's really how I was looking at the brand was like, what would I care about as a consumer? And that's how I shaped it around that.
Interesting. So, Max, what are your goals now? Like, what's your biggest focus? What do you want to accomplish that you haven't accomplished yet?
I mean, I think there's so many, right? Like we still consider ourselves an emerging brand. We're up against these huge incumbents with basically infinite capital. It's really competitive. It's a bit of a dogfight for shelf space. There's probably only going to be a couple emerging brands that really have staying power. And so the goal for us is to one bring transparency into the category and make sure that we force others to do the same thing. We set that benchmark. So that's a really important thing that we're trying to do. The other thing that we're trying to do is, continue to increase our distribution footprint, continue to be more available for adult tobacco consumers, and create a brand that resonates with the consumer. Because I think that's going to end up being the moat in this category is who can actually create a brand that resonates with people in this category.
Max, that was all the questions that I had. I appreciate taking the time to do this. I think it's amazing that you've built this from trying something that solved a problem for you to, this problem being solved at scale. And you've got amazing distribution now. I mean, you are the category leader in this space. And I think the space can be much bigger. And I think you're working obviously to do that. It's exciting to see where it will go. And I appreciate taking the time and doing this and sharing your journey so far.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.